Thousands of VIPs, including senior UEFA and FIFA officials, could be let into England for the Euro finals next month without having to quarantine.
Yes, under the new considerations, around 2,500 people could get special access to the country. UEFA says it would use strict testing and a bubble concept that would mean their stay in the UK would be less than 24 hours. We asked football fans for their reaction.
I think as long as people have been vaccinated, they've been tested, you've got a negative test, then I don't see why. It doesn't matter where you are in the world, really.
It's a bit of a mockery for all these people who have spent a lot of money and saved up and followed their teams for years to not be allowed to go and do it. So
we're not supposed to travel when there's thousands of these guys going in. You know, the prawn sandwich brigade. You know, just let the fans in. Let's get on with it.
Well, joining us in the studio, journalist and broadcaster Rachel Johnson, who says yes, VIPs should be exempt from the rules.
Not exactly, but we'll come to that.
We'll come to that, yes. And former Tory cabinet member David Mellor, who joins us from Dorset, and says no, it's not fair to allow this exemption. Very good morning to you both. Well, David Mellor, we asked football fans, perhaps we should have asked people who want to come over here for other reasons, because Tricia has emailed, as a Brit living in France, I will be so angry if Euro football VIPs get to come to the UK without quarantine. We're double jabbed, we want to come. We haven't seen our oldest for 15 months, and there are a number of complaints like that. It is, again, one rule for them and one rule for everyone else, isn't it?
Well, you don't really need me, do you? Because you've summed it up perfectly.
Yeah, we should have got Tricia.
Travelling round at the moment to try and find an alternative venue for my son to get married, because he's caught 2 days before the end, supposedly, of this semi-lockdown. They're being inconvenienced. Endless people are being inconvenienced. Why should a lot of UEFA fat cats be allowed to benefit from an exemption that means if there's any truth, and I don't actually think there is a lot of truth in the fact that at the moment we are very vulnerable to the spread of this thing because most people have been vaccinated. But it shouldn't be one rule for one and one rule for the rest. I appreciate the Johnson family clan are not big believers in rules, but once you step outside of the world of Boris, where rules are what happens to other people, I think it just rubs the nose of a lot of decent folk, whether they're football fans or not, that it's one rule for them and one rule for the rest of us.
Rachel, I'll let you have to come back on that one, I think you've got your right to reply there.
Look, I agree with actually a lot of what David Mellor says. I think that there is... The reason I want this to go ahead, it's not because I want VIPs to have an exemption that is not available to Joe Public. The reason I want this to go ahead is I think it's important that Britain hosts. This is the chance that Britain has to pitch to host the World Cup in 2030. But above all, I think that if this event does go ahead on British soil with 2,500 VIPs and hangers-on and wives, I think it will literally put the final nail in the coffin of the COVID restrictions. The government will have to open up probably before the terminus date of July the 19th, because I think that the COVID restrictions will be collapsing under the weight of their own contradictions, and the country will not put up with it. So I want it to happen, because I think the optics will be so bad that the country will just decide to get on with it and do what it wants. Also, I think that if they do argue that 2,500 people can come in if they're double jabbed and then maybe tested,
well, hang on,
it's really hard to argue against foreign travel.
Yeah,
I think it's going to help.
Sorry, Rachel, to interrupt. I don't think they're requiring double jabs. I think
we haven't seen the fine detail.
They're saying testing and a bubble and be here for less than 24 hours. I mean, David Mellor, we're talking about VIPs, but what about... I mean, you know, it would be absolutely fantastic if it was going to be a home nations final. Then we would just be talking about...
We'll hope, won't we?
Sorry, David, say that again.
Not much chance of that with old Gareth, but nevertheless, we'll hope. But look,
keep the hope alive, David. Keep the hope alive. But if we have a final where fans might be coming from Germany, from Spain, from Italy, from France, what's going to happen with those fans? Is this going to apply to them as well, that they wouldn't have to quarantine?
That's exactly the point, of course. That's exactly the point. If we're going to have a credible final, you've got to have fans. And so this 2,500 is just the icing on the cake. Look, at the end of the day, Rachel and I, though I'm trying to stir things up with her, but actually we don't disagree about a lot, because what she's really saying is that she thinks that the rest of us should be let in on this act. Look, it's perfectly obvious from the Sunday papers that Matt Hancock failed to tell the group of ministers led by Boris Johnson who made the decision that actually the vaccines were standing up much better against this Delta variant, and therefore actually, one of the key reasons why they took the decision to have this further 4 weeks in limbo wasn't actually necessary. What I'm saying is there is absolutely no reason why this afternoon they shouldn't scrap the whole thing. But if they are determined to get their pound of flesh and are pushing the rest of us around, they cannot make exemptions, not just for UEFA officials, but for lots of travelling fans as well. I'm all for travelling fans, but they shouldn't have rights that we don't have.
Yeah, I mean, you know, it'd be ideal if they turned around and said, oh, actually, we're now considering this double jab opportunity to everybody to travel, be able to travel, that'd be fine. But let's say they don't. Do you buy into Rachel's idea that in the end it becomes this sort of cost-benefit thing? Well, actually, there is a risk, but the benefit supersedes the risk, if you like, in the fact that this is about diplomacy, this is about doing a deal with UEFA, and it's a marketing event to try to encourage some, you know, them to put the World Cup here, which will be beneficial to all of us. And do you buy into that? There's a balance to be made?
No, because first of all, I think that, you know, I've lived through a number of World Cup bids when I was a minister and all the rest of it. We never got them. Last time we had the World Cup was in 1966, remember that very well. I don't believe that it's worth sacrificing the integrity of government for a dim prospect of getting the World Cup. What we need to do is have some common sense. Why are we still running away from this virus? We were told that if we all got jabbed up, that would be it. We could get back to our normal lives. Well, we're not. The only people who are going to be allowed to get back to their normal lives are UEFA apparatchiks and an as yet undisclosed number of fans travelling in.
Well,
we should have the same rights
yes,
there.
Rachel, that's an interesting point, isn't it? We are constantly hearing over the last couple of days that all of us, once we're double jabbed, may be entitled to this same right, that you can come in from your holiday and you will not have to quarantine if you come from an amber list country. Also, that if you have contact with someone who has COVID and you're double jabbed, you may not need to isolate.
Well, we're hearing this, but it hasn't been announced
No.
yet.
Well, but I just wonder whether if the government said, we're going to allow fans in from whichever countries are in the final, we're going to allow those VIPs in, but they do need to be double jabbed, and we will open up that to Brits as well, or anybody living here, whether that's part of the plan.
I just don't think that you can half fill Wembley, that's 45,000 people, allow them to come in for a gala event like the Euro 2020 final and not offer those same freedoms under the same conditions to the general public that has put up with huge compliance and you know, goodwill for, what, 16 months. It's just, this is going to be the gateway to freedom, I think, this Euro 2020
But they would have to announce that.
Yeah, they will. But also, you can see it happening. Susan Hopkins, Dr. Susan Hopkins, is the coronavirus place person on Public Health England, said that when we reach the point of 7 out of 10 adults vaccinated, then we have to cry freedom. At the moment, we're at 6 out of 10, so we're almost there, and almost
we
a million.
Because at the moment, people just feel like there's a two-tier system.
Of course they do.
Michael Gove came back from Portugal,
and he went into a
Champions
weird
League.
testing scheme.
He was in some kind of pilot testing scheme
we're all
where he
in some.
didn't have to isolate. We saw the barbecue on the beach at the G7, you know, where they've all got their arms wrapped to get around each other.
The Queen and the Eden Project, they're all having a lovely time, and I just think it's time that they, you know, rolled that out to the rest of us.
Your dad had a nice holiday last year as well, didn't he?
Well, that was last year.
Yeah, but that was a nice holiday.
He hasn't used the Stanley Johnson loophole this year.
Right. Well, we laugh about it, but I think the thing is...
It's not funny, actually.
No,
I mean,
I think the thing that people, I think most of us, including me, I think we're all on that edge of wanting to go, I'm fed up of this now.
Yeah.
And we will do what others do. And we sometimes will look and go, oh, God, if they're going to shake hands, all right, maybe I will. Oh, they're hugging, maybe I will. And if we see, like you said, 40,000 people come to a capital city, which will, even if it's just for 24 hours, I think that sends a signal to everybody, well, if they can do it, then the rest of us are all right.
I think it's over, yeah. I mean, you can't have the country open to VIPs and closed to British business. It just doesn't work like that.